you mention this syncing with your cycle, and I feel like that's coming up really big now for period health. Can you educate folks who don't really sync their cycle what they can actually do?
You have 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, and you can actually sync them back to the seasons. Menstrual phase is your winter, your cozy time to rest. Then follicular phase, that's your inner spring. And this is when estrogen's rising. If you ever feel really creative and excited, you're probably in your follicular phase. Then you have luteinizing hormone spikes, and that's when you ovulate. This is your inner summer. This is when you feel like very sexy, high libido. This is your ovulatory phase. Then after you ovulate, going into your luteal phase. This is typically associated with PMS. Progesterone takes over from estrogen, and the corpus luteum starts producing this progesterone, which raises your body temperature.
Can you tell us a little bit about how somebody can start incorporating this in their hectic, busy lives? Many times we're thinking, I've got to get this deadline. I feel like crap because I'm supposed to get my period in a few days. How can we plan for this?
Yeah,
Hey loves, do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are tuning into this. It helps grow the show more than you know. Thank you so much again, and enjoy. Let's talk about periods.
I am so excited to talk about periods. This is going to be the best episode.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So when did you decide that you were just going to focus all in on period health, and what were some of the gaps that you probably saw in the industry, being a dietitian, being in women's wellness? And yeah, I guess we can start there.
Yeah. So if you would have told like 12-year-old me that I would be talking about periods for a living, literally running around Austin in like a vulva costume, giving a TEDx talk on my first period, I would have been like, absolutely not, because I had so much shame around my period and I really was so disconnected from it. I was on birth control almost my entire life, but I got off of birth control and I was like, I'm going to be this holistic goddess. Everything's going to be amazing. No, it was awful. My hormonal acne was like the worst it had ever been. My cycle was so irregular. I had awful cramps, had to take off work like every single week. So I started just being like, there's got to be something more to this. Like, if over half the population has a period, this is literally how life's created. It shouldn't be this painful all the time. And sure enough, there are thousands and thousands of peer-reviewed research articles that indicate nutrition has a huge implementation on our periods. And even from that lifestyle, diet, the way we live, you shouldn't be in pain every month. And that just like spurred this whole deep dive into just really getting into understanding health, really understanding holistic health, period health, cycle tracking, seed cycling, and now it's pretty much my whole personality.
I mean, I wish I met you when I was like in high school, because I got my period when I was 10, but I just remembered going into my elementary school, and it would be every month that I would have to literally get wheeled out in a wheelchair. And sometimes they would have to call the ambulance because the pain was so bad, but starting from like 7th or 8th grade. And I just remember, oh my gosh, I would dread having my period because I'm like, oh no, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Like, I felt like I was getting punished every month, and nobody was really talking about like really bad period cramps and things like that. And then of course, several years later, we're now getting into this idea of seed cycling. So can you talk to us a little bit about, because now you've created an entire supplement line for women's wellness. Why did you start with seed cycling, and what is it, and how can we start doing that?
Yeah. And well, first off, like, thanks for sharing that, because I think a lot of people have a similar story where we had awful periods and everyone's just like, oh, it just is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it
just
is.
Get over it
off. It's like the rite of women's passage. I feel like a lot of my family members were like, that's part of being a woman.
Is what it is.
And they would giggle and everything, but it was like, okay, so you mean to say I need to have a hot water pad, Advil, Tylenol, like take it preemptively every month for those first 2 days or even 3 days. It was, literally the pain was horrific.
Yeah. So just to start there, like, so many people experience that. And that's kind of the other reason I really started with seed cycling. So as a dietitian, I'm very skeptical of the supplement industry. I always have been. When I've had a private practice, people will bring in buckets of supplements. and half of them don't do what they say they do if you run them through consumer labs or third-party testing. And it's not even the intention of the company. Sometimes it can be the manufacturers, it can be the batch that they got, but they're just not as good for you as everyone thinks they are. So I was like, I have to find a way to do this with food, because food is something our bodies know how to absorb. Naturally, food is easier for our bodies to process, because if you think about it, we were made to eat food. Like if you look out in nature, it's what we were supposed to have. Supplements can be great at certain intervention times. Like I'm not anti-supplement by any mean when it comes to like really good ones, but food first has always been my approach. So when I was looking for something for myself, I couldn't find anything. And then I was seeing a doctor in New Zealand, and then I moved back to Austin, and I heard seed cycling a few times, and I was like, okay, there's got to be like something to this. So I started researching it, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to try it. My acne was so bad. It was like ear to ear, like painful, couldn't sleep.
Oh, wow.
Honestly, a lot of vanity went into making this company, because I was like, I'm just sick of everyone seeing that before they saw me. And it just felt like this battle for my self-confidence. And so I started seed cycling because I was about to go on Accutane. This was like my last.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Accutane was the thing.
It was. And that was like my last ditch effort to like really move forward, was like, I'm just going to try seed cycling. In 3 months, my acne had it wasn't gone, but it started to heal. I had no new hormonal acne. So I didn't have a period for 6 months after coming off birth control. And then my cycle was like 60, 58 days. Within 3 months of seed cycling, my cycle was down to 30 days. Acne was healing, and I had a period actually come, and I didn't even know it was there. Like I just went to the bathroom and was like, oh gosh, I'm on my period. That's never happened to me in my life. Every period's been painful, just like you were describing. So I was like, gosh, there's got to be something with this. And seed cycling is really simple. All it is tracking your menstrual cycle. So from the first day of your period till you ovulate, you have ground pumpkin and ground flaxseed, 1 tablespoon of each. After ovulation till your next period, you have 1 tablespoon of sesame, 1 tablespoon of sunflower, ground, and you just eat them on the foods you're already eating. And so it is simple. And I just started doing that, tracking my cycle. Sure enough, it started working. So then I started making it for my friends. Then their friends wanted it. And then before I knew it, I had like a line outside the door of my apartment in downtown Austin.
No way.
And I was like, okay, I guess this is like a business. I guess we could like help more people doing this. I've learned a lot about business since then. I had no business background, and it's been really cool to see how many people it's been able to help.
So you started this just because you were finding your own solution.
Yeah, because I couldn't find anything on the market that I would take or recommend to a friend.
Wow. And so, well, tell us a little bit more, like why these few seeds in the first part of the month, and then we switched to the other 2 seeds for the second part of the month. What are they feeding? What kinds of nutrition are we talking about?
Yeah, so if you look at the menstrual cycle, there's technically 4 phases, but it breaks out really into supporting estrogen and supporting progesterone. So in that first half of our cycle, from the first day of our period until we ovulate, we're really focused on supporting estrogen. So that's going to be, we've got magnesium in those seeds, we've got omega-3 fatty acids, we've got zinc, and we've also got prebiotic fiber, gut health, hormone health, thyroid health. You cannot talk about one like without the other.
Right.
So that's that first half. Then after you ovulate and you're going into the next half of your cycle, your luteal phase, sesame and sunflower, super rich in vitamin E and vitamin B6. Those are both clinically proven to be PMS busters. You've got the prebiotic fiber again, selenium to support our thyroid. But then you've also got a little bit more fat in those seeds, which is really important because in our luteal phase, our blood sugar is a little bit more unstable. And you still have that fiber to come in and support. So it's kind of cool how if you think about a seed, it's like the placenta of the plant. It has all of this dense nutrition in these tiny little things, because I don't know about you, I'm really busy, you're really busy. It's hard to sit down and plan out your entire day to get enough nutrition.
Right.
It kind of plugs in like a multivitamin for your hormones.
That you're not actually taking, but you're actually eating, which is great.
Eating, digesting, absorbing, all the things. Like, that's important.
And so, and my brain goes to, well, you know, if most women who are listening to this, or maybe they have daughters, if they're having these really hard periods, because I remember a doctor even saying this to me, well, it's not going to hurt that bad after you have your first child. And I'm like, okay, I'm in college, and I'm like, well, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I'm just going to have to brace it or go on birth control. And so what I'm hearing is that with these nutritional supplements, kind of like the seed cycling, this kind of helps alleviate what may be causing or what may be deficient in our bodies, which is why we have these hormonal acne and painful periods?
Yeah, so it's really cool. There's actually 2 peer-reviewed studies on seed cycling, and it was looking at PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome specifically. But yeah, they found that it helped to regulate the menstrual cycle. They found that it alleviated pain. They also found that it led to more regular ovulation and general like quality of life and satisfaction. And it's pretty incredible if you read some of the reviews on our website, because my personal story is one thing, but then to see all these other people was really kind of one of the coolest things about it. Yeah, people who were going to get hysterectomies, who had such painful periods, they were about to have hysterectomy, after 6 months they have really good periods. Endometriosis is like the one thing I would say is different. Endometriosis, it can help support it, but endo is very, very, very painful. But other than that, like when it comes to painful periods, seed cycling really does help.
This is brilliant. And so what now for the misconceptions that a lot of people think of with menstrual health and just thinking about how we're supposed to eat? I feel like a lot of times you see these memes on Instagram or just online about, oh, you're vegging out, and so because you're PMSing, it's okay to eat the junk food, eat the fried foods, eat X, Y, and Z. Can you speak to that as also a dietitian?
Yeah, so one part of me as a human is like, if you're craving it, like eat it. Like we don't need to create fear around food. There's no bad food, no good food. There's just food. But if we dig a little deeper, I really like to get to the root cause of things when I'm working with clients. It's like, okay, so you're having these intense cravings every single month. Let's look at what our body's actually trying to tell us. So you're craving those really salty fried foods. That's telling me we might not be getting enough protein and we might not be getting enough fat. So your body's trying to get these things very quickly. Are you a little dehydrated? I think that's the other thing when we crave these salty foods. Like, are we dehydrated? Do we need more electrolytes in our diet? And then when we're craving these really sweet foods, dark chocolate, magnesium, then also, again, with the blood sugar instability, we have that in our luteal phase. So maybe we're not eating enough. Again, protein, I feel like I just always go back to protein. Like so many of clients I've worked with and myself, like just weren't getting enough protein. So I always like to say, if you're craving it, it's okay to have it, just enjoy it. But also, like, if we want to get to the root cause, there probably is a reason why you're craving it.
Right. I mean, I'm just thinking about, okay, chocolate, like almost daily, and it's because of the magnesium content.
Yeah.
Right?
Or ice cream, calcium. There's lots of like calcium in milk. And so if you look at all these different, in fat, so if you look at all these different things, there usually is a reason why.
Because you're deficient, or you're not eating enough, or you're not getting enough, or you're not putting in enough. And now you have a lot of other products.
Yeah.
Can you tell us kind of the evolution of maybe even your business journey? Because I think it's so fascinating that, so your journey is so interesting. You started out as, all right, I'm taking this stuff, it's going to be for me. And all of a sudden you have a line outside your door and you're like, all right, maybe I can start charging for this. And then what else happened?
Yeah. And then people started to, our customers are really awesome. If any of our customers are listening, I love you guys like with my whole heart. And they kind of informed the evolution of our products. So it started out with seed cycling, and then we launched a perimenopause product because we had some people who were seed cycling for perimenopause, which can start as early as 35, which a lot of us don't talk about because society is so hard on women already. Add in aging to the mix. It's like, nope, you can't have any information. We're not going to support you. We're not going to talk about this. So we have people reaching out to us being like, hey, I want a seed cycle. I'm in perimenopause. It's getting tricky because my cycle's getting really irregular. So then I dove into researching what's really supportive for perimenopause. I actually found more flax and more sesame, and having everything in one bag with more fiber and calcium would be supportive for perimenopause. So we launched that product. Then we had a lot of people be like, look, I know this is TMI, but my libido's awful. I don't know what to do. Then we launched our maca product, and then that evolved into a latte blend because everyone was like, I don't know how to eat this maca, it's bitter. And then we had a lot of people be like, hey, I'm on birth control, or I can't remember to take the seeds every day. Can you please make something that's just like a 1-a-day multi? And I was like, well, I'm not going to make a pill because that's against everything that I'm for. We spent a year and a half and 120 different tries to make our Cycle Bites, which is a food-based multivitamin, which contains plant-based vitamin D, vitamin B12, lots of magnesium. It's got 2,000 milligrams of ginger in every bite to help with inflammation and painful periods. And then we did a clinical study on that product, and it had incredible results for improved quality of life, period pain, and hormonal acne. So
these are the chews.
Yeah, the little chews. And
wow.
So, yeah, and those are like a daily multivitamin. So really our customers just really formed our product evolution and giving them what they wanted and what they needed in their daily lives.
And how has that shaped you as the person who not only has been the person benefiting from all of these products, but also now as in the founder seat?
Yeah, you know, I think being a founder is as hard, if not harder than I thought it was going to be. I knew it was going to be hard because I worked at small businesses. I have learned more about myself in these past 4 years than I could have ever done. And it's funny because it's named Funk It Wellness. So I started it when I was almost 26, 25. I was so angry at the world. I was so mad that people didn't tell me any of this. I was mad. I was ashamed of my period. I was frustrated I didn't have this knowledge forever ago. And then I was really frustrated that I felt like every investor or person I talked to, especially, no offense, guys, a lot of them were guys. They didn't get it. They really belittled me. And so that's why it's named Funk It. It's like a play on words, obviously.
So you were getting rejected by these male investors, and many times I think the studies are out there, but only 2% of venture capital goes to women founders. And while it's wild because there has been nothing on the market really to really support women's health, and we go through this every month. So how did that turn and change for you? Was it self-funded? Did other women investors come in? How was that experience?
Yeah, so self-funded for a long time. I had $6,000 in my savings account. I worked a tech job for 6 months, just long enough to like save up the money to start the company, drained my savings, started the company, and then we just kind of operated like basically spending as little as possible, trying to reach as many people as possible, to the point where I was like calling people I knew like, hey, do you want to try this product, and selling that way. And then we gained some traction and we got a really amazing female angel investor who came in and helped us. And then really we've been operating just off of like a very small amount of funding, basically bootstrapped up until this point. And we're almost at profitability because we don't want to have to answer or change our formulas or adapt to fit. Like, we're trying to break the mold, not fit into it. So I find that funding that doesn't really happen.
Right. And I guess tell the audience, why doesn't that happen when you are funded?
Yeah. So a lot of times investors want to look at what's worked in the past for other companies that they're familiar with, which I totally get it. Like, if I was giving someone my money, I'd want to like almost guarantee that it was going to work. Like, there is a part of me that empathizes with that. But then the founder in me is like, no, but what we're going to do is going to change the world. And so I think a lot of times if they don't understand it, they haven't done it before. Also, let's be honest, guys, the market's rough right now. Fundraising for women was hard, has always been hard. It's really hard right now. So just kind of, they don't understand it. It's not malice. I just think it's misinformation and not having the knowledge.
I guess my question for that is, for anybody who is braving something new, what is your advice? Because I can't imagine it was easy to get rejected by many of these investors, and which is why you named it Funk It Wellness. And it's like, look at me now. But what is that advice for anybody that's listening to this that is thinking about doing something brave? And I loved your episode you just did on this, like about being a beginner, because I think taking the ego out of it is the first thing. You are going to make so many mistakes. You are going to feel silly. You are going to doubt yourself quite often. But just knowing that, like, if you have a passion deep down inside for something, go for it. Do it. You owe it to yourself to try. That's like what I've always said to myself, is like, my biggest thing in life is like, I don't have to have a lot of money. I don't have to have a lot of these things, but I have to look back on my life and know that I gave everything I wanted to give. Effort. Mm-hmm. So that was this, and just jump in. I think we spend a lot of time worrying about, are we going to look silly? Am I going to look stupid? Are my friends going to judge me? Is my family going to think I'm crazy? I think all of those things happen to me, but I have the best friends I've ever had. I have amazing support network, and I have so much confidence, which I didn't before I started this business. And so
it's worth it. But just got to do it, and it's hard.
What is your mission now, 4 years into the business?
Yeah, I think my biggest mission is that every single woman or person that menstruates understands their cycle. Like, I just want people to know how amazing the menstrual cycle is, how much it is an integral part of our society that we've ignored. And I want people to embrace it and understand it's okay to talk about it, to sync your life with it, to eat for your menstrual cycle. And periods aren't gross. Like, every single person in this world is here because of a period. We've got to reject the notion that they're gross, shouldn't be talked about. And we need to improve women's healthcare. Like, we're over half the population. So we need better healthcare. And so that all kind of wraps back into why we do the silly TikToks and Instagrams and try to make it fun and free, because that side of my business I'll always leave free because I want every single person to have access to it.
So you mentioned this syncing with your cycle, and I feel like that's coming up really big now in how, for, period health, how we sync the first 15 days or what we do kind of versus, or the first 20 days of our cycle versus the last 7 or 8 days of our cycle. Can you speak to that a little bit and maybe educate folks who don't really sync their cycle what they can actually do?
Yeah. Okay. So there's this analogy. I did not come up with it. I don't know who came up with this. So if it was someone listening, just let me know. You have 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, and you can actually sync them back to the seasons. It's really cool. Moon phases, seasons, it's all very connected. So menstrual phase is your winter. That's your inner winter, your cozy time to rest, lots of slow moving, the essence of winter is your period. Your hormones are actually really low here. So if anyone ever is like, oh, you're on your period, are you hormonal? First off, they should never say that, but actually you can correct them and be like, hormones are really low on your period, so you're wrong. Crockpot phase is what I call it. So slow cooked, nutrient dense, stews, red meats, any of these things that are more nutrient dense. If you're vegetarian, have iron, but do vitamin C with it, so it unlocks it, vitamin K from greens, and then this is where you're gonna have your pumpkin and flax seeds. So menstrual phase.
And you can use the Funk It Wellness, the seed cycling in the stews during the period.
Yes, so that's the perfect time.
The first few days of the cycle.
Good to point out. Your first day, your first true day you have to use a period product until you stop bleeding, that's your period. And it's really interesting. I always thought the menstrual cycle and your period were the same thing, and they're 2 different things. So period, that's going to be days 1 through 5 for most people when you're bleeding. And then follicular phase is next. That's your inner spring. So the inner spring, this is when estrogen's rising. If you ever feel really creative and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so creative, I feel so excited, I feel like I'm glowing, you're probably in your follicular phase. If you're a content creator, I always tell people this is a great time to batch content. If you can do it all in your follicular phase and ovulatory phase, it's interesting. I've done this where I've recorded content on my period versus follicular phase, and the content in my follicular phase does so much better.
Oh, interesting. And that's which days?
Days basically 6 through 14.
Okay. Oh, right before you ovulate.
So it's short. It's a short little window. You got to cram a lot
a week.
You got a week. Batch all your content in a week. And then, so that's their inner spring. Estrogen's rising. You're prepping for ovulation. This is when you're going to have more blood sugar stability. So complex carbohydrates are great in this phase, like sweet potatoes, rice. I always think of those big yummy grain bowls that are packed with veggies. Love that for this phase. Focus on fiber though, because you want to detox that estrogen as we move into the next phase. This is also a great time for social activities.
Okay.
So don't overbook your luteal phase, which is coming up. So if you're making plans in your follicular phase, keep in mind in a week or 2, you might be a little bit more wanting to stay home, get things done, clean, tidy up. So then you have luteinizing hormone spikes, and that's when you ovulate. This is your inner summer. So this is when you feel very sexy, high libido. Well, for most people, some people do feel really tired in this phase if you have a hormone imbalance and bloated, but not everybody. You ovulate. Your fertile window is 4 days before ovulation and 1 day after, because sperm can live in the body up to 5 days. which is wild.
I remember that from trying to make some babies.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it can live. And so this is your ovulatory phase, your summer phase. Cruciferous vegetables are my biggest tip for this phase because they can help get rid of excess estrogen. So broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, all of those things you're going to want to eat in that phase. Then after you ovulate, going into your luteal phase, this is actually 2 weeks. So this is the 2 weeks before your period, and this is typically associated with PMS, but progesterone takes over from estrogen, and the corpus luteum starts producing this progesterone, which raises your body temperature, and so you actually need an extra 100 to 300 calories per day.
Oh.
That's why you're hungry.
So after you ovulate.
Yep. After you ovulate, your body is like moving, shaking, going. If you feel a little more introverted in this phase, I say this is the phase when the rose-colored glasses come off. This is when you're like, okay, I'm getting stuff done. If something's particularly bothering you every time in the luteal phase, think about it. Like, does this actually bother me all the time? Make to-do lists. Really like get all those things you planned in your follicular phase done. And then from a nutrition standpoint, you need more protein because your blood sugar is not as stable. So I increase my protein by about 20% in this phase. And I always start off 30 grams of protein in the morning for breakfast. And so you want to really focus on fat, fiber, and protein to keep your blood sugar nice and stable.
Okay. And then we get into winter again, which is...
Oh, yeah. And then that was your autumn. So that was perfect. So that's like your inner autumn. And then we go back to winter and we cycle all through it again.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I've ever heard of the seasons and the cycles like that.
Yeah.
That's
and then
brilliant.
new moon is like your menstrual phase, and the full moon is like ovulation. The energies mimic each other.
So new moon is your menstrual phase. Full moon is your ovulation phase.
Yep.
Oh.
If you think about the energies, it's really interesting how they're similar.
Okay. And how can we, so if somebody's listening to this right now and they're like, okay, you just told me all of the seasons, I don't know what to do with this information. How, because I know you do one-on-one coaching as well with some of the products that you have, how to use it. Can you tell us a little bit about how somebody can start incorporating this in their hectic, busy lives? And many times we're thinking, all right, we've got to get this deadline. This thing is due tomorrow. It's due yesterday. And I feel like crap because I'm supposed to get my period in a few days. It's my inner autumn. How can we plan for this? What do you recommend?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So the first thing, like, this is a lot of information. So feel free to like pause, take notes, come back. And it took me a long time to learn all this too. So it takes time, but you are your body's expert. And I say everyone's actually a period expert because if you have a period, you're an expert in your cycle. So step one, just start tracking your period and taking notes. When I was first learning, I would track my period in an app and I would put one word a day of how I was feeling. I did it for 3 months to look for patterns. And then I found those patterns. And then I started incorporating seed cycling because I knew where my cycle was. And then slowly I just started to learn all of these things. If you can time block your calendar ahead of time, I think it's really helpful. For a lot of people, like the 2 days before their period and their actual period, if you can just like have like busy work you need to get done or things that you like admin type work, I think are really good for that time. If you can do that, that's great. But it's just like one step at a time. First, start tracking. Then start incorporating something like seed cycling to nourish your cycle. Then start listening to how you feel when you exercise. So like then you can slowly start to pull in the exercise piece. And then before you know it, you will be a expert in living with your cycle.
Right. And I hear that, obviously during your period, you're not going to do like HIIT workouts and things that are that aggressive. Do you have kind of recommendations for workouts that people do to base it on the seasons that they're in?
Yeah. So for me, I'll tell you guys what I do. Everyone's a little different. So on my period, I'm really into like stretching. I really like yin yoga, walking, any kind of stretching or like release activities.
So anything that's more restorative, going inward. Yes.
Exactly.
And not so lifting weights and masculine.
Exactly. Restorative. That's the perfect word for it. Any restorative exercise for you. Follicular phase, I think of like dance cardio, Pilates, reformer Pilates, Zumba, anything that's like running, anything that's higher intensity, going to get you sweating.
So those HIIT workouts.
HIIT workout, I would say the best time for those is going to be probably like days like 13 through 15.
Okay, so before your ovulation.
Yeah, and like right when you're ovulating, because you get that big hit of testosterone. So that's like when HIIT and like really intense, like if you're like really training for something and have to do like your heaviest lifting, your fastest run, that's ovulation. And then luteal, I really focus on strengthening and lengthening. So heavier weights, more like flow-based yogas, those type things is kind of how I do it. I do reformer Pilates throughout my entire cycle, but I take it way easier on my period at reformer. I'm like just stretching there. I just really like the people. So I'm like, okay, I still want to go to the studio all the time.
Love that. I love that. This is brilliant because I feel like a lot of times we're told or we see from our partners that they just do the same routine every single day and it doesn't matter to them. But, you know, for us, there are certain times of the month where you are a little bit more tired. And there are certain times of the month when I'm on my period, I don't really want to do a hard workout. I have no desire. I barely have any energy. So I'm so glad you're speaking to that. And for anybody that's listening to this, to be brave. And what I'm hearing is to be brave, to really pay attention to what your feelings are during these phases so that you can actually start to see what's good for you.
Yeah, and advocating for yourself. So I think the brave part comes in is like, for me, like my friend asked me, Casa del Luz here in Austin, there's like these really fun dance classes we love to go to in one of the studios. She's like, do you want to go? And I'm like, honestly, it's the first day of my period. I'm not going to want to do that. Thank you so much for inviting me. Me 3-4 years ago would have been so nervous to say that to a friend. I would have just sucked it up and done it. And so I think that advocating for yourself, sharing, and like bringing everyone in on your journey is a really brave, hard thing, but it's really good.
That's so true. Yeah, to even just say, no, it's the first couple of days of my period. I'm going to just sit inward or go inward.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be brave, to be able to understand and really support yourself and what you need.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. So I know you have a few little gifts for us today. What is it that we can actually show to our audience if you are watching this on YouTube?
Yeah, so I brought the seed cycling kit. So that's like our bestseller. It's like the thing that we have the most of. It's our Nurture blend, which is pumpkin and flax, and our Radiate blend, which is sesame and sunflower. And you just take 2 tablespoons of each one, like depending on where you are in your cycle, put it on your food.
Amazing. Okay, so I have the Radiate blend in front of me. So this is, it even says it on the package, days 15 to 28 of your cycle. We have to refrigerate after opening.
Yeah, so, okay, this is actually like you don't have to refrigerate.
Okay.
But I always recommend refrigerating seeds because the thing is, keeping in the refrigerator or even the freezer keeps the nutrients fresh longer.
Got it.
But they won't go bad.
And then what's the one that you have? And I love that you have a date here because then we can...
Yeah, you can write like when you're starting. I have the Nurture blend, which is pumpkin and flax seeds, days 1 through 14.
Okay, and the Nurture blend is basically... What's the ingredients in that one?
This one is pumpkin and flax.
Okay, so this is kind of like when you're actually... the start of your period into your luteal.
This is the one you'll start with. I tell people it's easiest to start when you're actually on your period because I feel like it's like ovulation can be almost a little more mystical to track. And so I feel like when you start your period, that's when you start seed cycling.
Okay. And you're saying that people start to notice changes.
Yeah, 3 months.
3 months.
Yep.
Okay, so you have to commit for 3 months.
Yes, you do. And that is a hard part about anything with your hormones. So the egg you release this cycle started forming 3 cycles ago. So when we're looking at changing anything with hormone health, it's going to take about 90 days or 3 cycles.
Oh, wait, say that again. Your egg that...
you release this cycle started forming 3 cycles ago.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a really bad period, sometimes it can be from immediate stress. Oftentimes you got to look back 3 months ago. What was I doing?
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So if you have a really heavy period or if you have just more pain or more hormonal, it's probably what happened 3 months before.
Yeah. When I'm working with clients, that's what we're doing. We're going back. We're looking at that. We do a lot of lab testing too to like see what's going on. But I'm always having like, okay, what were you doing 3 months ago? What was going on? And they're like, that makes sense.
So tell me a little bit about how you work with clients then.
Yeah. So I think the thing I was really excited about was I worked with clients before starting Funk It. Funk It got very busy. I couldn't work with clients anymore. And I was actually focused more on like pediatric health before I got into hormone health. But what I kept seeing again and again was seed cycling is amazing, but it's not a miracle. And really, if we're so bio-individual. So I need to like look at your labs. Dutch testing is my favorite test. It's a dried urine hormone test. We always Dutch test. We love GI map testing because so much of our hormone health is tied to our gut health. We always start there. And so people come to me when they're experiencing anything from wanting to get pregnant to dealing with a new like Hashimoto's diagnosis to painful periods or no period at all. We start with the testing, we work through it together, everyone gets a personalized plan, and then the goal is in 3 to 6 months, they're really on their own feeling better.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you just hit on something that I feel like a lot of mamas go through after they have their first child, second child, is the relationship with their thyroid. So can you speak to that? Because I feel like I've had quite a few people on the show already that are either thyroid experts or women's, wellness experts. And I'm curious to see, what have you noticed in the people that you've worked with in hormone shifts and balances or imbalances with their thyroid?
Yeah, so it's crazy. Thyroid health is so under talked about, in my opinion, especially for women. Most people who have Hashimoto's are women. That's when your autoimmune system starts attacking your thyroid. I have that and it runs in my family. And so I learned a lot of it like firsthand again. And I went to a lot of doctors that didn't know what they were necessarily doing. And so that's why I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this to somebody else. I'm going to like really help people. And so thyroid health, postpartum Hashimoto's is very common. Well, I wouldn't say common, but it does happen to a lot of people.
And what happens in the postpartum phase and why is it that our thyroid levels get out of whack?
Yeah, so if you think about after you give birth, which I've never given birth, but I know a lot about it from a textbook. And so if you think about textbook after you give birth, it is the fastest drop in hormones you ever can experience in your life. And that's why postpartum, like the shakes after you give birth, all of these things. And it is a big stress to the body. So it is a massive stress to the body. And it's a lot of healing, a lot of things going on, a lot of hormone shift. Then we go into not sleeping and the whole new parent aspect of it. So essentially a lot of it comes down to the massive hormone shift, stress, genetics, and environment. So it's kind of like it just creates this perfect storm to start experiencing more thyroid issues.
And what are some of the things that you kind of support these women going through figuring out their thyroid health and setting them on their way?
Yeah, so the first thing, especially if they're here in Austin, is getting them into a really good endocrinologist so that we can do this work in tandem. So thyroid health is one cool thing about thyroid health is there's some really great thyroid medications that can give you really immediate relief. Like when I started taking my thyroid medicine, I felt better within 24 hours. So that's the first thing I do is if we get labs back and we are seeing abnormal thyroid, we are getting them an endocrinologist right away because we want them to feel better really quickly. Then we peel back and we look at hormone and gut health. So estrogen dominance can be a big thing when it comes to thyroid issues, which is having too much estrogen, usually those heavy painful periods, a lot of anxiety. Then weight gain can be another thing that can come with that. And then we look at gut health. We're usually dealing with constipation, not moving our bowels like as much as we should.
Right.
Also, estrogen gets excreted through the GI tract, and a lot of people don't realize that what doesn't go through the liver goes through the GI tract. If you're constipated and it's just sitting, it's getting reabsorbed back into the body. And so all of these things kind of come together. So step number one, we're getting them using the bathroom regularly. Yep. It's very important. If you're listening, I know people don't like to talk about poop. You should be going at least 1 to 3 times a day.
We're braving poop.
We're braving poop. Yep. We're braving periods. They all go together. You need to be pooping at least 1 to 3 times a day. Very, very important. And then we're going to look at the gut health aspect of it. What's going on? What's causing the constipation? Is there any inflammatory response going on? With thyroid conditions, I often look if they have a gluten sensitivity because those often go hand in hand. That can cause damage to the GI tract. So then I always start GI, then we work backwards and we look at, okay, what's going on with the hormones? Are we seeing the excess estrogen? Are we seeing high cortisol? And then we work back from there.
Cortisol being the stress hormone.
Yes, exactly. Cortisol being the stress hormone, which is very common in hypothyroidism, to have elevated cortisol. And then we just peel back these layers until we get to a place where everything's kind of back to homeostasis.
All right. So, Brave Table fam, I think the first thing that we have to look into is taking one of those tests to really see. So, maybe just like a blood panel to see where you're at. What does the Dutch test actually do? Because I've heard a lot about it. I think I've even taken one before. I'm slated to take another one sometime either this month or next month. But you take it on certain days, right?
Yes.
Like 19th
through 22.
Okay.
Depending on your cycle.
And tell us why we do that.
Yeah. And so this is actually really interesting too. So one, if you're going to get your thyroid labs, make sure you ask for antibody testing too. Your insurance will most likely cover it, and it's added on. That's how you can know if you have the autoimmune component. But for Dutch testing, we want to take it in the luteal phase, days 19 to 22 or 21, because this is the best time to look and see all of the hormones in a snapshot. So if you were to take this test on your period when your hormones are all very low, it would come back saying you're in menopause, which happened to me. I got a blood panel done, and they took it on my period, and they were like, oh my gosh. And so then I went to a new doctor, and they were like, no, they took it at the wrong time of your cycle. So it's just very standard to take it at this time, because it's kind of where we're used to measuring. And it's going to look at estrogen. It's going to look at progesterone. It's also going to look at DHEA, cortisol, and it's kind of put the whole picture together. And the cool thing about the urine test is it shows you how you're metabolizing these things, because it's one thing to say, okay, estrogen's elevated. It's another to understand there's different types of estrogen, how they're being metabolized, because all of those require a different approach.
Right. This is all super fascinating. And before we get into our igniting round, you've been so generous with all of your information. I feel like we're all getting a deep study into our menstrual health and our hormone health. And I think it's one of the things that we really need to start braving. I've been going into this big healing journey this year I did a full kind of MRI test and, just blood panel work. And I think it's so important, especially because we have a really small family, to prioritize our health. And we have to really understand and know a lot of the things that we may not know. And I'm so glad that you have now really started this whole journey helping so many women do the same and really take ownership of their health. So thank you for that. And where can we get all of your products and follow your fun little TikToks? I think it's hysterical. We're going to link your TEDx talk in the show notes. So tell us where we can find you, how we can connect and buy your products.
Yeah, so funkitwellness.com is where you can buy all of our products. We're also on Amazon for our seed cycling kits. And then Funk It Wellness on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Pinterest and all the places. We have tons of recipes on there. So if you're like, okay, this sounds hard, I don't know how to do it, we walk you through it. There's lots of free resources, recipes. And then if you want to connect with me, my Instagram's Carbs and Kate, like a piece of bread, Carbs and Kate. And all my info for private clients is on there as well.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. So we're going to do this section on spilling the chai. So chocolate or ice cream?
Ooh, chocolate.
Netflix and lounging versus a hot bath and candles?
Hot bath and candles.
Your favorite go-to product?
Ooh, like any product?
Any.
Castor oil.
Oh, okay. What does it mean to be brave?
I think it means listening to yourself and what you want out of life, even when it's hard.
And one word that describes this season.
Exciting.
Well, thank you. You have been such a treat, such a joy. I cannot wait for everybody to go ahead and grab your products. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been very fun.
Wow, that was definitely an eye-opener. I hope you had so much value out of that conversation with Kate, just like I did. And if you are curious to grab all of her products, go ahead over to funkitwellness.com. You can follow their journey on IG, TikTok, Funk It Wellness. We've also linked her TEDx talk in the show notes. And share this episode with a family member, a friend, a colleague, somebody who does menstruate. And maybe you are that partner that is listening to this. Share it with the loved one in your life that probably needs to go check into their health and really prioritize their own health as we brave these big conversations. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week. We celebrate you, we adore you. And if you haven't already, share your thoughts with us on IG. Follow us along on the Brave Table, or tag me or follow me at Neeta Bhushan. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? All it takes is 2 seconds to literally leave us a 5-star review. And all you have to do is go to iTunes. If you're on Spotify, that's great too. And go ahead, scroll all the way down, hit that review button, and give us 5 stars. Share your journey with us. What did you love the most? What were so insightful? And if you can screenshot that and send it to support@globalgrit.co, you have no idea. It helps the show grow more than you know. And we are so, so, so thankful for that. And that's all I have for you this week. So don't forget to be just a little bit more brave. Go ahead, grab some Fun Kit products. You can get it on Amazon. And I will see you next time.